Well, it is great having you on, Peter, and so grateful for this opportunity to be able to learn, I'm going to say, from the master, because while obviously you're not a Magento developer, you are the person behind the tests, all of these Magento tests, and kind of you're that famous figure, I think, in relation to getting them up to this incredible level that they're at here. And so I'm really grateful to have you on, and maybe we could start with just talking about your background. Like how did you even get into this whole certification stuff?
All right. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on board. Okay, I think it's great to be here.
My pleasure.
I've been in IT training forever, and I had developed all the competencies and skills matrix for Compact. So this goes back a ways, right? Somehow, somehow EMC got wind that I could do this, and they recruited me to create the EMC Proven Professional Program. Okay. And I said, I know nothing of it, but they said, we believe you have the skills to do this because you are the only one we've seen who can do this whole skills matrix stuff.
Right.
I said, okay. So I took them up on it. And at the time, there wasn't many out there. Okay. So in a sense, I called up a couple people and said, all right, how did you do it? What makes you successful? So I started from there, and then I started game planning. I put together a proposal, and then I launched the whole EMC Proven Professional Program, and all the training, and I started figuring out things pretty quickly, that the timelines that people had in the past were not applicable to today's world. So I had to change things up. These exam development workshops that I started, I really refined them. They gave me a book about this big, and I whittled it down to like a page.
Good for you.
And then started pumping out exams. I started getting better at it. I hired a whole staff, a whole group. Next thing you know, things have really taken off to where I got recruited to do this all for the whole Storage Networking Association. So I learned about, other groups and other worlds. And then I got recruited to Hitachi, where I ran training and certification for 8 or 9 years, doing the same thing. And all the while kept getting better at it.
Sure.
Just to fast forward, I had decided I was going to do some contract work, and I ended up meeting Richard Bukeas, because I'm also the chair of SEDMA, the Computer Education Management Association, for certification. I've been that for 5 years.
Yes.
And he said, we need some help. Would you do it? So I said, sure, I'll do a contract with you. And then that's really kind of when you first, kind of met me.
Right.
And, I put together, the strategy around this. So I just went really quick through 20 years. But the whole thing is that I brought all this experience around how to accelerate and get the most out of everybody, and come up with these exams that I think really measured the true skills and knowledge of people. So, to me, scenario-based exams are the key. I'll tell you, when I was part of the IT Certification Security Council. So those splash screens that all these rules you see that you got to read?
Oh yeah, lots of them.
I had worked with some lawyers back at EMC, and I shared that with everybody. So you'll see a variation of that agreement that I had drafted up with legal many years ago. So basically everybody's been signing the agreements that I put in place.
Right.
So the thing is, I've always thought certification is so important because it gets you to focus on truly what needs to be tested. I had the slogan, what matters get tested, it was tested, it matters. And so that drove all the curriculum, that needed to be produced, which I'm hand in hand, I'm doing both, like I'm doing here at Magento.
Right.
So lo and behold, this short-term contract turned into a full-time, director's position. And, I laid it out that here are the exams that I think we need to do. Here's how we do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then went out and recruited, people like yourself to participate in these things. And I used to tell everybody, have a leap of faith with me. This will work.
Yes. And it does.
And I think, the end result is that if you pass, like the professional developer exam, I have high confidence you can do the job.
Mm-hmm.
And now, if you pass the associate exam, I know the associate developer exam, I know that you have put forward the time, effort, and energy to start your career in this field. Mm-hmm. And this is the starting point, and you're determined to make it, and you've taken the training. And, so I have high confidence now your career is on a great track. But I believe that any of these exams that you pass really means that you know what you're doing. And that's my goal. So I know that was kind of a long answer to a short question.
Well, no, but it's good because, you've, as somebody who has participated in a couple of your test writing workshops, I have always been impressed with the level of knowledge that you bring to the table. Obviously, it's in a different domain than the rest of the people sitting around the table, as in what they're working on, actually writing the questions. But, in clearly communicating these objectives and testing a candidate against these objectives, to me in just making sure like the question is understandable in a whole bunch of different languages, that's one thing. It's one thing to write a test for English speaking only people, but here, your candidates are worldwide. And you've done, I think, a really excellent job at that. And so it's been a pleasure to work with you in this process. And just thinking about because again, people all over the world look at you as like the man with the knowledge on these tests. Like, I mean, like you are probably the single only person in this entire world who has seen every question on every test. So you know exactly what is on these tests. So like, I think maybe you could help share some suggestions. Like, I guess we could start out with what kind of test preparation would you recommend? So somebody, maybe they have some experience, they're ready to go take this test. They've decided on this test. How would you recommend they make sure that they're going to pass this test? I mean, again, for almost everyone, $300 is not just like not like, we don't want to throw that type of money away. So, making sure that that's a good investment, it is a good investment, just making sure that we do a good job with that investment. So what would your suggestion be there?
Okay, well, as you know, the more advanced exams, the professional level exams, you do have to have real world experience. Okay, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Okay, so the question is how can you get that experience? And you've got to get on projects. There's no doubt about it. But it's like, well, how can I get on projects if I don't have experience? Well, this is why we have the associate exam, because it shows that you can now at least do some fundamental things that can support a project. And that's the key to getting yourself going. Now, if you've been doing, Magento for a year and a half, okay, great. But you might not have mastered the areas that we think you should know. And by the way, when I say we think, I work with, the leading developers across the world, and I go back and forth and, what do you need to know to be successful? Mm-hmm. What's important? What are the 5 things that make a difference? So we start building these blueprints. These blueprints, how we create the exam are based on them. But those blueprints get converted to the study guides. Mm-hmm. Right? Really pay attention to the study guides. Yes. I can't emphasize that enough. Now, and by the way, this is not I also tell people, hey, there's a couple ways you can also study if you're experienced. We offer like a 10-week study guide course, mm-hmm. where what we'll do is we will give you exercises to do, but you got to do the homework.
Of course.
These exercises are directly tied back to the objectives. So by doing these things, you'll have been exposed to the type of questions that you're going to get. The questions that we build are not just memorization questions, okay? You have to be able to intuitively figure out and parse the information in front of you to come up with the proper solution. The only way that, and many times you can do that, is to literally, do these types of efforts or works or projects. So you have the 10-week study guide, and that will help people, for the professional developer. I will tell you that the solution specialist, SwiftOtter, who we partner with, I think this is a plug for you. We recommend that you study and take the training prep for solution specialists, even if you've been a solution specialist. The reason why I recommend the study guide and working with you is that you might know 5 of the 7 areas or 6 of the 9 areas, but you know what? Really, we want you to know all these areas because we think that'll make you the best developer.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing that it's like, oh, I never touched that. I never worked with admin HTML. And we could see that reflected in like everybody. Yes. But we felt that it's very important that you start learning about these things. And so, we expected people to just take a chance and they would probably fail if they didn't spend any time studying, even though they were experienced.
Right.
Okay. I mean, there's some people obviously who are going to crush an exam no matter what, but a lot of people tend to say, I did it this way. This works. But, I never thought about that, or I never used this tool. We literally put out that if you can master these areas, you could be better in your job.
Yes.
So now, by the way, I also sent you a link, and I don't know if you want to send it later, of an article I wrote on the 9 different approaches you can take to study for an exam.
Yes.
So that was in Certification Magazine, the January issue, which also had the salary information.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Okay, and if I can digress,
sure.
In the top 75 certifications listed, 4 of them were Magento. So you had the front end, you had the professional developer, you had the solution specialist, and making the top group was also the associate developer. So to me, and they give the salaries versus rest of the world versus US. But when you think about it, you could take a 5-day training class, right? The essentials class that we have, study, spend time, take the SwiftOtter prep session as well. You offer that too, right?
Yes.
Yes. That will pretty much guarantee you're going to pass that associate.
Yes.
Okay. Chances are now you're going to get a job.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay? So if someone said, how do I get started? Well, you have to have a bit of the background. You have to have, PHP and I said, that's it. Take the training. All right. Study. Take your SwiftOtter. You'll pass. And that, and I think that honestly, if you were to corner me at some restaurant, well, if they're ever open again, I'm sorry.
You never know. Exactly.
That's what I would tell them. Okay. Yeah. And I've said this to people, and even though I'm on your SwiftOtter program, obviously I think a lot of what you do, and I think it goes a long way. And by the way, I appreciate when I see all this stuff on the web when they're so excited to have passed the exams and you help them. I think that's wonderful because we want to really grow the community.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about, is helping one another and help. And because I think the certification, one of the things I found personally, so I just passed the JavaScript developer one myself. And one of the things that it really was a light bulb moment to me in my study is I find, and it seems to mirror other conversations, I gravitate towards studying on those objectives that I enjoy. So say I don't like admin HTML. So I was like, I don't like admin. I'm not going to dig into this. It feels too hard. It's difficult. UI components, whatever. But what I really have come to see through this, and it's just exactly like what you were saying, is you can't, just because you like an area, you don't like an area, does not affect whether you should or should not be studying that area. In fact, you might want to take it as a red flag that you actually need to study that all the more.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. I do want, by the way, I want to call out two people who've been, and by the way, there's been many, many, many people. We have a certification directory, certification advisory board where all the people who helped us write it. But Vitaly Golomosi, who's on my team, is simply just a brilliant person and a man that everybody should know. And along with Vinay Kopp.
Oh, absolutely. Both of them.
The two guys that have just been fantastic. There have been other, great contributors, across the board, really talented people. And having these real practitioners write the exam items is a big deal. And if people don't understand what takes place, we put that blueprint together. We walk into a workshop, and there'll be between 8 and 12 of us. And you've been there. And, we set up some guidelines. And, when people first start writing, they struggle. And then, but at the end of the day, it's all about creating the type of item where we feel, if someone can answer the correct percentage, again, we feel good about it. But we really put the exam through the ringer, and we do it all in a week. And as you know, there's no feelings spared, when you're writing items, because at the end of the day, I'm looking at creating exams that matter to the world. And exactly. So, and I know that sometimes I might have bruised a few egos. But the whole thing is that by creating these exam items, by the way we do it, I'm not worried about test sheets.
Right.
Okay. Because honest to Betsy, even if you somehow manage to get a hold of the items, if you don't understand what's going on, you won't have time to figure it out in order to answer the questions. Okay. Because by the way, we randomize the answers.
Oh yeah.
And we randomize the items, and you have multiple test forms.
Yes.
But I actually did it as a test one time. I took the whole items in front of me with a new test. I said, okay, I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to try to go back and forth, right? Within 25 minutes, I realized that, I don't have the time, right?
Right.
You have to understand that I used to be so obsessed with catching exam sheets. I said, I need to change up everything. And that meant writing scenario-based questions, which are the hardest things to write.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So that effort, by doing that, by writing those, I spent very little time on exam sheets. And by the way, if you want me to, I will tell you a story about how we caught some, if you want to know.
Sure. Yeah. I would like to delve into that because, and that was another question I didn't have in our show notes, but talking about the whole update process. And I think that's almost just as relevant as the whole writing this test in the first place. And so, kind of what we worked through in Orlando here a few weeks ago, just because, and I'll just drop that out, just throw this out here real quick, because one thing we did, so obviously the test has been written by all these professionals, really sharp people, but then occasionally, who knows how often it is, and obviously you never know how often it is, but go back in and assess the questions and review them, and is this still accurate to this very specific version of Magento, but also seeing, is this a indicator of somebody who will pass the test, the relevancy, or maybe it was a p-val, I can't remember the exact term, and I think that also shows your continued efforts in making sure that these exams are continually relevant. You're not going to see these ridiculous out-of-date questions, questions talking about Magento 1, for example, and also that these questions do matter for this specific test in proving that you are a subject matter expert. So all of that ties in with what you were saying about catching people cheating, because I was just talking to somebody the other day, and they talked about, and I don't know if this is specifically relevant to it, but they talked about, and I begged them not to. They said that once they were done with when somebody went in, of their team members went to take a test, they shared it with the questions that they remembered with the rest of the team. And I was like, please don't do that. You are hurting your reputation. You are hurting each one of these people's reputation, and you are trying to hurt Magenta's reputation in general. So with that, I would love to hear. And I told him, I very gently, kindly worded him. I was like, Peter does know when people are cheating. And so maybe you can share just a story or two about how this works, because you do catch people in this.
Yeah, there's a couple different things you can do.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And I'm not gonna tell you all the different secrets.
Right. Okay? Those are Peter's secret sauce there.
Okay. But with every exam, when we update it, we don't tell people we update them, by the way. Mm-hmm. All right. And so if they try to, get to some source that may have unearthed some items, they'll be behind. Okay. Right. So I never really tell people when I update things. I will subtly change the blueprint if I have to, and the exam guide. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, these objectives are pretty solid. We try to make them forever objectives. So there's some obvious test cheating things that we do. If you take a remote test, there's some what we call some guidelines that the test delivery vendors follow.
Right.
And I'll be alerted as to some behavior, and you're taped. And I've stripped people, okay, of their credentials. Yeah, and the thing is, because it's taped, literally, I will say there was a person who didn't realize that a shadow of them was in the door. Okay. Yeah. And then when they asked him to move the camera, he was like, "Oh!" You could see him run away. So and then there were some other things where we saw someone's hand with a camera right behind the guy's head trying to tape it.
That's crazy.
So what we did was we also, so they lost their credentials. They were banned from the program. Mm-hmm. And
that's serious. You say banned from the program. I mean, that's can they ever take a test again?
No.
Yeah.
No. And by the way, when you talk about sharing items, that is exam cheating. They just don't realize they're doing it. They're trying to help each other out. The best thing you can do is say, look, this topic really gets talked about, and you really better know this area well. Mm-hmm. And by the way, when you're taking the test, you'll know when you're not doing good in certain areas. You'll know it, and you'll know where you're weak in. But we also do in-service analysis of the exam items, mm-hmm. and it is clear, I put forward the guidelines of, what to look for. And I could definitely tell who's guessing and who's not. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's the art of reading this information, and, setting up, what to look for Vitaly, Vinay, and the other, you guys did a great job updating all the exams. So by interpreting the analysis, we, what to look for, are the items performing correctly? Are the right people getting the exam questions right? Are the people getting them wrong? The people who should be getting them right? Why is it that they're misinterpreting misinterpreting? Mm-hmm. That's all good. The question. Yeah. So we look at those things to constantly improve it. Right. And we're never about tricking anybody. I emphasize we're not about tricking anybody. When people say, well, these questions, some of them are long and they're convoluted, and I say, the more you know the topic, the less convoluted they are.
That's 100%. And I know it, especially if someone is not from and is not native English speaking. So I know it becomes a little harder for them. But the other thing is, as you are sitting in a conversation with a merchant, as you are sitting with a group of developers analyzing a problem, those problems are likely to be much longer than what you will see on your screen there. So it does prove, I think it's good and important because it proves your knowledge even of those type of situations.
Yeah, and I think in every group, by the way, we usually have international people there participating to write items. We've had people from all the different countries, Europe, South America, India, and we do look at it as like, okay, is this understandable to you, right? Does this make sense English-wise? And Rodrigo Morio is a perfect example, right?
Yes, he's great
guy at Web Jump, and so it's very important that we get that international perspective. Now, we do design the test to actually be completed in 60 minutes by English-speaking folks as a first language. I thought that in order to be just, fair across the board, I would just give 90 minutes for everybody. So really, most people do complete it at the 60-minute mark for every exam.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And I don't really, so obviously I'm saying something public here that I don't usually share too much, but people will say, well, the questions are long and I just barely made it, and I speak a second language. Well, that's how it's designed.
Yes.
And it's designed with that in mind. Hey, there are questions that are very short that people take 2 minutes to answer.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So
absolutely.
It's like it's not necessarily the length.
Yes, for sure.
Right. It's all about the understanding.
Yes.
But we definitely, like, if you come up with a 3-syllable word, I'll say let's reduce it. And you've been part of it where we start with the item is this long to this, nice and condensed, to where every word matters. So
yes.
you read that question carefully. I will tell you, in terms of test taking tips, I don't know if you want to save those to the end. That'll be some pearls that I can give at the end.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll be interested to hear that. Go ahead.
And I have one other, and at the end, I'm going to offer a code.
Nice.
So if you make it to the end for watching this podcast to get a discount on an exam. Okay.
That will be a big hit.
Okay. So, but you let me know when we're at the end there and I'll do that as well.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's great. And thank you for sharing your thoughts on it. I think, again, kind of what to recap, again, cheating hurts everybody, whether it's just explicit or a little bit less explicit in the form of just trying to share questions and that sort of thing. But ultimately, either way, you're trying to just get very, very pinpointed pieces of knowledge to pass a question, whereas a question is literally designed more globally than that, is to test your knowledge of an objective. And so It's cheating yourself, it's cheating your team, it's cheating your merchant. So it's not just getting this badge. You're missing out on one of the greatest pieces of value that a test is bringing you. And that's either you're proving your knowledge of this aspect or you going to up your game as far as your knowledge of a specific aspect. So exactly. Yeah, this is really good. Let's just talk about scenario questions a little bit, and I remember the first time we got in a room there, and that was in Orlando at that, New Horizons building, I think, if I remember correct. Went upstairs and, I was really excited about this. And I remember you just got in there, you started chopping up the questions, and like we talked about, like the ego, and it was really good because at first I was like, what's going on here? But as I observed this, like each question, it was like as you were going through this, I was pretty well amazed as far as how relevant the questions became, how to the point, how precise, because I found as I was reading this, there was so much information in there that really didn't matter at all. I was trying to convey in the question. So, but let's talk about like the scenario questions and like what type of questions are they and how do they look and how can somebody effectively answer those type of questions?
Well, one thing is that, I don't believe in memorization questions. And I think that...
What would be a memorization question?
what's the name of the software that allows you to extend, you know,
Okay.
whatever. And then, you list four names. It's like, okay, if I read it, okay, I know it. Blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
It's like, what good is that? Right? So it's the name of a software program. Honestly, what good is that?
Nothing.
But what is good is how you use that program and what effect it will have on a
Mm.
project. So
Effect.
all the information that is in the scenario
Mm-hmm.
you need in order to answer the question.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's extra information, we take it out, right? So,
Right.
if there's a question around performance, we're going to focus on, what causes, latency,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you have security concerns, you have performance concerns, and one goes up, one goes down. So if you do this, and then what are the other factors? You need to understand these factors, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so if you're said, given this scenario that you're in Texas, the other, your other office is in San Francisco, everybody comes online, at 8 a.m. you know, how do you make sure that the throughput of information, gets to everybody and they can do their transactions without delays?
Mm.
You
Yes.
know, how have so I mean, I'm kind of going into some networking issues, um, but let's face it, is people are going to, although a 24/7, everything is 24/7, but let's just say that, at noontime, everybody does shopping
Yes.
online. How are you going to accommodate, for
Mm-hmm.
a massive influx of people,
Right.
right? What do you
Absolutely.
need to do? So by setting it up that scenario, that the answer will probably be something to do enhancing performance,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's the sort of clues that you need to gain from it. And then it's like, well, if I did this if I look at the answers now, oh, this will create a greater bandwidth, right?
Mm-hmm.
This will take longer for people to do, right? It's like,
Yes.
okay, that's not an answer. So the whole idea is to give people the information. And by the way, we put code right into our questions because I
Yeah.
don't want people to have to remember that. Here it is. So I never, because I have people say, well, in my job, I would just look it up. I said, okay, well, let's just put it in the question.
Right there. Right in front of you now.
Right. But now you got to understand what's going on within that code.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Right. And so that's important.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You've done this. Why has the page stopped rendering? What did you do? Right.
Exactly. Absolutely.
So I think it's important because when you have a real job and you go, the site's down, I'm getting a 404 error. What the heck happened?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So,
Well, and the key point is though, and I remember this really, really well in the solution specialist test. Those people who have been in this case where the site's down, we're getting a 404, or whatever the situation is, they're going to know the answer almost immediately. It's going to be okay. It's going to be this, or this, and versus somebody who doesn't have that experience, or who hasn't investigated the causes of 404s on a website or whatever the objective is. They're going to like, is it this, or this? It's going to have a much, much harder time with answering the question.
right, exactly. I mean, I love it too when I see the peer interactions among the subject matter experts, and it's brilliant to watch, and it's really amazing, listening to everybody. And by the way, I do actually pay attention to you guys. I actually do. Um,
Yeah.
and so, because we level set these exam items for the difficult
Mm-hmm.
ness, and then that has a bearing on what it'll take to pass the exam. And but it really comes down to people who are practitioners. They write the tests, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's my job is to help them write the type of questions that really can validate someone's knowledge.
Exactly.
And I've done quite a lot over the years. So
Yes, you have.
I would probably say probably more than anybody else alive. So I'm, or dead. But I've done hundreds.
Yeah.
And what was great about Orlando, by the way, was having such a great group of subject matter experts working together, looking at all the in-service analysis information, and really being able to be self-sufficient groups. And you guys really learned a lot. And people, if they ever get an opportunity, it's such a great way to work with others,
Mm-hmm.
get to know a vast network of really smart people. At the same time, have a chance to influence the community with really quality exams.
Absolutely.
And I think and that's the key. I love the fact that we have people coming back to do more than one exam with me.
Mm-hmm.
So
It shows we all like you, Peter, and it's really true because you just to be frank. Sometimes you can be really getting it going here, but I know everybody at the end of the day realizes that it's for our better. I personally remember the first time as well as the second time. We didn't have as much interaction this last time, but those specials first two times, I went away with those two times being a better writer, more concise, all of that. So it's been an incredibly good, valuable experience for me, just from that perspective. And I know that other people have have had similar sentiments as well.
You know what I like is I've had people really, really frustrated, like really, really like upset. And I can think of a few of the people there, and they've the ones who want to come back even more, because they're so passionate about it.
Yes.
And quite honestly, like, I do vet people
Right.
prior to coming to a workshop. I do ask, different community members. I do check around.
Right. So not just anybody can come and write questions.
Yeah. So I do vet the group coming in, without a doubt. I try to be as diverse as possible. And we do these workshops. By the way, I also do them for course development.
Yeah.
I do the same sort of thing. But, if you can get an endorsement, I'm up for using different people to bring them into the fold. It's kind of funny too, is that when we go to events, I'm sorry about, there's no Imagine this year.
It's a real bummer, I know, but it is what it is.
That when we get together with all these people who participated, how everybody knows each other so well because they spend the week together, and you do get to know each other well. Great group of professional people, very dedicated, and I would like to think that all their writing has improved as well.
Yes.
I think.
Go back and look at emails. You can compare the before and the after. Before Peter and after Peter.
Yeah, and by the way, I was trying to get a 2020 tag to each of the credentials, including the solution specialist, after I updated that original one. Now, the original one, prior to me getting there, wasn't built in the same manner. It did a good job. It did its job. But now when you pass the one that we put in for the past year and just updated it, I really know you got the chops.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good one.
Yeah, I think the solution specialist is a great example. I know of no other program that does all scenario-based questions.
Yeah.
So by the way, I was going to say, I want to say that if someone refers to My Cousin Vinny as being a perfect movie, and they send an email to training@magento.com, and say they heard Peter Manijak say My Cousin Vinny is a perfect movie in this podcast with Joseph Maxwell, that I get a 20% discount.
Okay.
So if you write to training@magento.com,
training@magento.com,
and refer to My Cousin Vinny as the perfect movie. Now, A Few Good Men is the other perfect movie that I like. If you refer to that as well,
okay,
that will get you a discount for for your exam.
Nice. Well, that's a good reason to watch this podcast. If no other reason, right there. You get a great discount on your exam.
Now, do you want some tips and
yeah, that'd be great. Just like a couple of minutes. Yeah. What are the tips from the master exam creator right here? This is our opportunity here.
So I always pay attention to how an exam item is constructed. Mm-hmm. Okay. And invariably, if you can tell when someone has thrown together some plausible distractors or wrong answers that aren't much anything, but there's one answer that is so well written, I know that's the answer. Okay. So the other thing is
now the thing is, Peter's going to try to make sure that really well written answer is not going to get into the real test, but I'm guessing there's a couple that slipped by, I guess.
Right, but we try to make every answer very well written.
Exactly. Yeah.
So usually what happens is that if someone writes something really well, it's the longest answer.
Yeah.
Okay. So keep that in mind. The other thing is, I try to tell people, trust your instinct. Okay. If you think it's the answer, it's the answer. Don't overthink it. Okay. We're not trying to trick you. The other thing I try to tell people, and I'm sure you've heard me say this before, but if you're completely stuck and have no idea, like you're down to the last 5 questions and have no clue, go A, or B, and chances are you're going to pick up one of the questions. Now, you could go C, or D, but I will tell you that if it's all our answers are randomized, so it doesn't really matter. You just need to pick one letter. There might still be some older tools where if I had to tell someone either pick, it used to be pick C, if in doubt, pick C. But now that you have randomization, it doesn't matter as much. But trust your instincts. Trust your instincts. I think that's a basic thing. So hopefully this will help. You'd be surprised if you missed by one question and you have no idea on 5. Now, of course, if you don't know 10 questions, you're in trouble.
Yes. Yeah. I understand.
So hopefully that will help.
Absolutely. This is great. Peter, listen, thank you for taking the time to come on and chat and share some of your knowledge. And, obviously you've gained a ton over the years, and but obviously sharing your knowledge from a perspective, how enabling people to, what I look at is getting the test out of the way. Taking the test is scary, making sure your webcam works properly, all that stuff. So getting the test out of the way and just leaving it to you and your knowledge. And I think what we've talked about is particularly helpful in that direction. So I really appreciate you coming on, taking the time to share your wisdom and knowledge here.
No, I appreciate it. And hey, a lot of times I tell people, just take the test. Take the test. Go for it. Just
yes.
do it.
Exactly. That's what you got to do.
But, you never know. You may pass.
That's right. That's right. So.
Thank you so much for having me on. And I got to tell you, Joseph, you're a great subject matter expert. You've meant a lot to the Magento U and the program, the certification program, and the training offerings. And we really appreciate everything you do.
I am glad to be a partner here in this effort. And, as definitely as always, thank you for your effort, your work on this. So really appreciate it. Yes.
One last thing. If people want to send you a note or send to Manijak at adobe.com. Would love to hear stories about how certification, has helped them. I'd love to hear it, because then we'll if you want, we'll post this stuff, because I'd love to hear success stories.
Success stories, absolutely. I think it's great, definitely. So, Peter, appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. It was great talking with you.
All right, cheers.